The House come to order. Chair recognizes the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lee, Chairman Lover.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a resolution.
Clerk, see the resolution.
House Resolution number 260 from the House Rules Committee, the special order calendar.
Move for adoption.
All in favor say aye. Any opposed? It is adopted.
All right.
Clerk, call first bill on special order.
On page 33 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 112 with substitute from Senator Gavan relating to the Business Nonprofit Code.
Representative Wadsworth, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I move to carry the bill over.
Bill has been, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Bill's carried over. Clerk, call next bill.
On page 47 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 244 by Senator Weaver related to the Board of Medical Examiners.
Representative Betso, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill addresses a companion bill that I had here already before the members. It just provides for the definition of what an expedited license is. This is for the process of doing background checks on medical professionals so we can get our doctors in the workforce quicker. I move for the BR.
Chair recognizes the lady from Madison, Representative Hall, speaking on the BR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes,
Tell me
ma'am.
exactly. I've got all these bills here.
Sure, yeah, no problem. While you're fumbling through that, so this is a companion bill to HB 360. I believe we had it on the floor roughly last week.
And what did we do?
So I think it was last year we passed the Physician Workforce Act, and this was an act that was designed for our medical students when they were coming off after being students, so we can get them into workforce here in the state quickly. It provided for an expedited background check. The problem is the FBI says in order for ALEA to do what we called an expedited background check, they had to have a definition codified to explain what we call expedited license, and so this places that into that act, so we can do those expedited.
The word expedited, is that the language, main language? I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah, that is the term that the FBI requires and the definition the FBI requires so that the ALEA could do those expedited background checks for criminal backgrounds and things like that.
I think I got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. Question for the body's adoption of the BR. Clerk will unlock machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock machine and record the votes. 96 ayes, 0 nays. The BR has been adopted. Representative Betso.
Yes, sir. I move for final passage.
That is questions. Final passage, SB 244. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes. 102 ayes, 0 nays. SB 244 is passed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Member.
Thank the gentleman. Clerk, call next bill.
On page 45 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 192 by Senator Gavan relating to the legislature.
Mr. Pro Tem, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Law Institute's annual codification of what we did last year. It's the Pro Tem's job to pass it. With that, I move adoption of the BR.
That's questions. Adoption of the BR. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 101 ayes, 0 nays. BR has been adopted. Mr. Pro Tem.
Move passage.
That's question final passage, SB 192. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the vote, 102 ayes, 0 nays. SB 192 is passed. Clerk, call next bill.
On page 50 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 270 by Senator Orr, relating to public records.
Representative Almond, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Things changing quickly around here. Let me get organized. Just one second. Okay, this is SB 270, which is the Public Records Bill. This is a bill we worked on for 2 years. We actually passed this bill last year out of the House and the Senate. It went across the street, had a little blip, so we had to come back and fix the blip this year with the governor's office. We have done that, and it's back before you today. And unless there are questions, I'll call for the BIR.
Chair recognizes the lady from Madison, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The lady yield.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me what the blip was? You said there was a blip.
The blip. The governor's office had their own executive order that they had implemented with regard to public records and the way they were responding. And there were 1 or 2 provisions of the bill that we passed out of the House and Senate that conflicted with that. And honestly, I cannot remember what they were. But we have gone back, worked with the governor's office, worked with the league, worked with the county commissions, worked with the universities. All sorts of people have been at the table and looked at the bill, made whatever little tweaks they needed to make to the bill. So lots of hands have been on it. And basically what this bill does, it sets in place certain timelines to respond to public records requests. Currently, there are no timelines in our law. And so this puts timelines in.
Could you share with me what those are?
Yes, ma'am, I sure can. Let me pull them out to get them.
We're moving so fast, I can't keep up.
I understand.
Bill, my bills, I don't know if I have, I know I don't have these.
I can tell, it's pretty simple. So basically, when someone makes a public records request, we'll call them the person, we'll call it the...
So if I made a request today, right here.
Yes.
I wanted record.
If you made a public records request, say to your city clerk.
Sure.
They have 10 days, first of all, to acknowledge receipt of the request. That's step one.
All right.
Okay? They can do it that same day, but they have up to 10 days.
All right.
Following that, they have 15 days to properly respond to the request. They can either fulfill the request or they can deny the request.
Okay.
If they need an extension, they can request a 15-day extension. But we separate it into 2 different categories, sort of a routine request, and the other category is a more time-intensive request.
Okay, so what would be a routine request? Let's say if you had a court case or something, is that routine or is it?
They have defined routine in this bill, and again, this is with agreement of all the parties involved, as something that takes less than 8 hours to respond to and compile.
Okay, so you can do a routine request, and of that routine request, you have, making the request, you have 15 days.
First, you have 10 days to respond, just that you have
Right.
acknowledged receipt. Okay?
Right.
And then,
I'm sending you a request.
right,
You have 10 days to send a response to me.
saying, I received your request.
Okay.
All right, and
the
from
next
that day,
Okay,
the 15 days starts to run.
okay.
Okay, and I have 15 days from that day to fulfill your request or to deny your request.
Okay, so so if you fulfill it within the 15 days, we're good.
Correct, we're done, yes.
But if you do not, and you have to you request an extension.
Yes, you can request an extension, and there's language in the bill that says, you make all reasonable efforts to get it done after that 15-day extension.
Okay.
And the other type of request is what they call a time-intensive request, something that you estimate will take more than 8 hours. And if that's the case, then you notify the requester that this will be a time-intensive request, and you can
Let me
have...
stop you right there. When you notify the person that has requested that it's going to take more than the length of time that's designated by law, what is that?
45 days. Then we go to the 45-day increments.
Okay, all right.
They just give you more time, and you can extend that up to 270 days, and even...
That's,
yeah,
that's
a long
9
time.
months.
It is, but there's some requests that...
Give me an example of a request that would...
I don't really know, but I just...
No, based on your experience, what could you imagine? Would that be information from a trial, court I mean, there are different public information requests. I'm aware of those. It could, whether it's about property, whether it's about...
The University of Alabama football team, for example, that people will send in public records requests to people that do that job.
Hold on. Since you brought that up.
Yes.
Now, what public record about the football team would cause one to need a large length of time to get?
Ms. Hall, I don't do this every day, but I have heard stories. I have heard stories, just anecdotally, while I've been working on this bill, that's an example of a University of Alabama request that they get. Auburn gets the same request. Might be from anybody that's a resident.
So
that asks for all sorts of information, maybe about people's salaries, or maybe even information they have to pull together from different sources.
now, are these requests that you're talking about, using the example of a football team, are these from the average citizens? Are these from
anybody?
So this applies to anybody?
Yes, ma'am.
There's no limitations in terms of the public citizen, the citizen
Press
versus...
Association. There's no distinction between, if you do this for a living and you're trying to write an article about it, there's no distinction between that person and you and me making this request.
I have read recently that many times news reporters have been challenged to get information that they've requested, and I've never understood why that has been a problem, but.
Well, it's interesting because, I know it's frustrating for people who make public records requests. There are places that just never respond, and I know that's frustrating.
Right, that's hard.
And so, on the other hand, there are many, many, many frivolous requests that are very time intensive, and then you're taking time away from people who are trying to do other jobs.
Sure.
So there's got to be some fairness here, and that's really the goal of this bill, is to put timelines in place. And let me say 2 other things. First of all, if your community has, I'll call it, more strict timelines to respond, so say the city of Tuscaloosa has its own policy that says, we're not going to take 10 days to acknowledge a request, we're going to take only 5 days. You can make it stricter.
Sure.
You just have to at least comply with this state law. And several communities do have stricter policies that they'll continue to be able to use. On the other end, there are municipal clerks or people who work only 2 days a week, say, maybe it's a small town and they're not open 5 days a week. These are all business days, okay? And so if they only work 2 days a week, then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the only business days that count that week are Tuesdays and Thursdays for them.
Are there fees associated with these, the requests?
Yes, this bill provides that they may charge a reasonable fee.
What is a reasonable fee?
Well, that's in the, they have to figure that out.
When you say they, so we could have a request coming from DHR or mental health or Alabama or Auburn, and everybody will have a different fee?
Yes, everybody can have a different
based on
fee,
the amount,
and that's the way it is now.
Yeah, I understand it is that way. So based on the amount of time it takes, there's no formula that has been provided?
There's no formula, but I do think if you had to defend it in court, you're looking at charging maybe an hourly rate plus any actual expenses you have, would be fair and reasonable, and I'm sure in the eyes of the court.
Well, I think that's a loophole in the bill.
Well,
A reasonable fee.
reasonable
And
fee.
each agency gets to determine what their fee is.
That's right. And everybody was okay with that.
And when you say everybody, who were?
I mean,
who were
people
the-
from all sides of this, people who
who
were on.
were the people involved?
The
in-
press, this is a press association bill.
understand. Press
So they're on that side.
Okay.
On the other side were municipal clerks, there were county clerks, there were league of municipalities, all sorts of people that are under them, universities that comply, so all sorts of folks.
I'm fine. That to me would be interesting, but that's not my job for me. And I wasn't. The committee obviously felt comfortable in terms of reasonable, but I
Right.
would expect across the board there should be something based on, as you said, maybe the hourly rate of the individual that's doing the work, the number of pages, those types of things
Right.
would be a part of
Hey,
it.
and that may be the next thing they come with, but this is where we are
Ladies'
right
time
now.
has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile, Pro Tem Pringle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ms. Almond, I want to thank you. I carried this bill a couple of years ago, and this bill has taken years to work out. It's a very important piece of legislation. It's much needed, and this is a negotiated agreement that we've not been able to get to for, I know, at least 5 years. So I want to commend you for bringing this bill and encourage all my colleagues, let's vote this bill through and get this issue off the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that history there.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the lady from Mobile, Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon.
Good
Representative
afternoon.
Almond. So I smiled, and I know you probably did too, when our colleague, Representative Mary Moore, wanted to know how you got to carry a bill early. So I want to know how you got to carry this bill.
Well, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think I was on the opposite side with the Press Association at one point on a bill, and we got to know each other. And
Have you
next
ever
thing I
worked
knew-
as a journalist?
No,
I know
I
you
haven't.
served on the city council in
Yes.
Tuscaloosa.
Yes.
Have you worked as a journalist?
No, I have not.
But you do have a little bit of ink in your blood.
I do. I sure do.
I had the honor of working with your uncle,
Yes.
Bailey Thompson, at the Mobile Press Register some years ago.
Yes.
And there was no finer journalist.
Well, thank you for
And
saying
it is
that.
no wonder that he was inducted into the Hall of Fame of the College of Communications at the University of Alabama.
Thank you.
I have been on both sides of this issue. I have received requests for public information, and I have certainly, as a former journalist, made a lot of requests for public information. As Representative Pringle said, this bill has been in the making for quite some time, and as you said, it almost crossed the finish line. In fact, it passed both houses last year,
Right.
did it not?
It did.
And then it did not, was not signed by the governor.
Correct.
So I'm glad we're almost to that point, and you are reassuring us that,
We have worked with the governor's office, and they are on board. Yes.
well, that is fantastic. Long time coming. If I were working as a journalist today, I might have a little bit of concern that too much time is being given to fulfill the request. However, the Press Association, I think, and the broadcasters have agreed to these terms.
Yes.
And all other parties have agreed as well. Thank you for working on the bill with them.
Yes.
I think it is a fine piece of legislation, and that this House ought to pass it unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Marion, Representative Estes. Be the fourth person to speak on the BR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Will the gentlelady yield?
I will.
I too want to rise and thank you for bringing this bill. And as our colleague who just stood before us said, I spent 30 years in the journalism business, and there is no perfect bill, but I think you've done a marvelous job striking a balance, because all public records are the people's business. And as a former journalist, I think it is very critical that they have the right to know what all levels of government are doing and how they're spending their money and decisions they're making, just as everything we do here is public record.
Right.
I also understand, representing a rural district, I was blessed in the journalism business after I left working in Tuscaloosa and Montgomery, that journalism is different in a smaller community. And I was blessed. There was never a time I asked for anything that wasn't produced instantaneously. Some folks may not be that blessed because their staffs are so small, they may need time to turn some things around. So I think, while not perfect, that's no side on your efforts, it is a very good balance, and you've brought all the proper parties together to bring about a good piece of legislation that I think serves the public in a positive manner, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'll give kudos to the Press Association, actually, for reaching out to all those people and making sure that happened.
Question for the body's adoption of the BR. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the vote. 103 ayes, 0 nays. BR has been adopted. Representative Almond. I'm showing sub, committee sub.
There's a sub, okay. There was one change made in committee, and that was to replace line 151 on page 6. Basically, what we're doing is just making sure it's clear that it's 10 business days and not just 10 calendar days, and that was the only change.
Okay, you heard the explanation of the committee sub. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the vote. 100 ayes, 0 nays. Committee sub has been adopted.
Thank you. Call for final passage.
Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson, Representative Van.
I shall not hold you long. I know that I was drawing nigh. But since there has been so much deliberation and compliments on this bill, tell me what this bill does, Almond. And I too want to know how you continue to get all of the bills that you have been getting this year. That does give me pause, because there are so many people with some of these bills that they have a great level of expertise in these areas. And I would just want to say again to these governmental affairs and governmental representatives around here that you all begin to seek out others to give them an opportunity to move some of your legislation. And it would give me a level of comfort when it is coming from individuals who, just as Representative Clark and others have come, who have a great level or degree of expertise, and can really deliver a great presentation of the bills. But you've had a whole lot of bills this year, and I'm still trying to figure out, I don't assign, I'm not here for that, but it is what it is. But will you just help me on this one?
Representative Van, basically what this bill does is establishes timelines to respond to public records requests. Currently, our law does not provide timelines, and so each community responds in a different way. Some communities do a really good job and have established their own practices and procedures, and do a really good job, even a better job than what this bill will require, better in terms of being responsive. Other communities don't do a very good job of responding at all, and so that's been a problem in our state for a long, long time, and we've been trying to address it for some time, and there's just a lot of different stakeholders who have an interest in this, and that's No, that's one of the difficult challenges with a bill like this.
How does
So-
this impact, or what impact does the Patriot Act have on what we're trying to do here with regards to public records?
I have no idea. What do you think it might do? And tell
I
me.
can't, I can't, I just didn't know. I know a lot of times, especially with the media, a lot of instances they are requesting information dealing with public records and things of that nature, or things that they feel should be public record. I know one of the tools that they employ is the Patriot Act. Typically is one of those things that they try to use to gather or be able to be in a posture to receive the information. And so that's always a fine line with that, and especially dealing with a lot of in situations in governmental agencies or sub-governmental agencies, municipalities, and things of that nature. Now, I'm standing up here giving this response. I don't know a whole lot because I don't know from which this bill originated, and I was just trying to see because, I have a lot of friends that are in the media, none in here. I'm not speaking of any journalist or person, but just throughout the country. And I know that's one of the things that we always talk about. And I've worked for a public housing authority, and the Patriot Act was always at issue. So I was just trying to get the gist of what this bill was relative to. And I guess I'll do my research on that. So I'll write it in. I just wanted to get a further clarity on it. And I'll just, what number is this? SB 270. Okay. All right, thank you.
We'll let you borrow the necklace too.
Chair thanks the lady. Question for the body now is final passage of SB 270. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the vote. 101 ayes, 0 nays. SB 270 passed as subbed.
Call for final passage?
That's too late. We already done it.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, body.
You're welcome. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson for a moment of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope the membership will listen very carefully. I want to give you instructions about community service grants. Listen very, very carefully because we're on a short runway here. The deadline for submission of the forms will be May the 13th. May the 13th. You'll be receiving, Karen has packets ready. Karen and Grace will pass those out, or you may stop by our offices and pick them up. You will have copies of your prior applications, which can be emailed to you if you want them. What you'll receive is a spreadsheet that shows who you gave to last year and all the information you need to complete an application, but we didn't have time to run copies of last year's application. So you'll have that information on a spreadsheet. You'll have 5 blank applications. You can also do those applications by email. The key thing is, though, we have to get them done and received by May the 13th. A reminder that you can give funds to public schools, K through 12, colleges and universities. If you give to a nonprofit organization or library, there's additional supporting documentation that must be submitted along with those recommendations. There's a 990E postcard that has to be submitted along. So there's some hoops you have to jump through if you're doing something other than a school. Just be mindful of that. Grants to the same school system for the same project or purpose, sponsored by the same legislature, will be made with one request. And incomplete applications will have to be returned, and we're going to finalize these and stamp these and get them official probably before the end of the month. Now, they'll take time for them to be processed before you actually get the money, but once we get to that stamping procedure, we've signed off on it, it's difficult to then get money. So just be aware of that. Yeah. You'll get in the packet the amount of money you have to spend, okay, for this year. Is that? Yes, yeah. Everything. The Senate passed the the Senate has taken care of that. So what's going to happen is the money that we redirected to these accounts, it's all in there. So what you have will be the final number you'll have to spend. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Clerk, call the next bill.
On page 52 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 56 by Senator Orr relating to education employees.
Representative Collins, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 56 is designed to close a loophole right now under existing law. If you are part of our retirement system and you're convicted of a felony, you lose the state portion of that retirement. And this closes the loophole for sexual offenses and obscene materials. I ask for the BIR.
This question is adoption of the BIR. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. 99 ayes, 0 nays. BR has been adopted. Representative Collins.
I'm happy to answer any questions and ask for final passage.
Chair recognizes a lady from Jefferson. Representative Moore.
No, I need. Y'all both got that green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Explain what your bill does
There's
again.
been a loophole right now. If you are convicted of a felony right now, you lose the state portion of the retirement benefits, not what you contributed, but the state. There was a loophole under sexual offenses, or if you're convicted of a felony of giving sexual offenses or obscene material to a minor, and this closes that loophole.
You forfeit your state
Forfeit
portion.
your state portion of the
portion
retirement,
of
not
it.
what you contributed, but the state portion contributed.
What happens if you've been falsely accused and you go back to court to challenge it, and finally they realize that you were falsely accused? And do they go back and reinstate it and pay you
overturned?
Yeah.
I imagine that it would be reinstated at that point if that conviction was overturned.
You imagine that?
I imagine.
And I believe if you imagine it can happen. Okay, that was my concern looking at it, because
It's
sometimes.
for convicted. Apparently, there was a loophole where you could.
Yeah, I remember we've talked about. In fact, it's been within maybe the last 10 years or so, a situation came up, and people was questioning how was that person being able to continue to draw their full retirement.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the lady from Calhoun, Dr. Boyd.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Do you yield? I just want you to go a little slower. I'm not against what you're doing. Just break it down just a little bit more for me, if you
I'm
just
happy to do that. I'm happy to do that. Under existing law right now, if you are convicted of a felony, then you forfeit those retirement benefits. There was a loophole around the sexual offenses for employees involving a student and obscene material of children. And this closed that loophole. It just says if you're convicted or plead guilty, then you forfeit the state portion of your retirement. You still would get the portion you contributed.
Okay. Now, when you say close the loophole, what is it now?
Right now, apparently the loophole was that they could plead guilty and not be convicted, but by the guilty plea, they still got all their retirement, and so this closes that loophole.
Okay, so only these are applied after you have been proven guilty.
Or pled guilty.
All right. let's say if a mistake or later on you find out, I guess it's a loophole.
That was
and
her
everything.
question, too.
Are there any provisions in there that you could go back and correct that, or does that bill not
Representative
address
Moore
it?
asked that as well too, and it doesn't say that, but I would believe that if a conviction was overturned, then you would no longer be convicted.
Lawyers
and
will
you would
probably
go back.
take care of that, wouldn't they? All
I
right.
believe so.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Question for the body is final passage of SB 56. Clerk on lock machine, the members vote. Clerk lock machine, record the vote, 101 ayes, 0 nays. SB 56 has passed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank the
body.
lady. Clerk, call next bill.
On page 36 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 186 by Senator Orr relating to elections.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile, Dr. Shirey.
Thank you for recognition. Members of the body, this is a ban on ranked choice voting. So if you know what ranked choice voting is, say there's 6 candidates, you go on your ballot and you rank the candidates in order of preference, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It's very complicated, it's very expensive, and a lot of times your vote doesn't even count because your ballot may be what they call exhausted. So with that, if there's no questions, I'd call for the hour.
Chair recognizes Representative Rafferty of Jefferson.
Thank you for the recognition. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Okay. I kind of want to see what's the rationale. I think I heard a little bit about what your rationale was, but if you could go back over that for me here.
Absolutely. So ranked choice voting.
Right.
I wrote 6 things about it. I wrote that it's more difficult, it's complicated.
Okay.
I also wrote that we're traditionally one person, one vote. It kind of goes against that.
Okay. All right.
You're not able to tabulate this at the precinct.
You're not allowed to what?
You can't tabulate the votes at the precinct. It's very complicated to go through several rounds of
okay.
voting.
All right.
It's very hard to explain to the electorate. We think our absentee ballots are complicated. This is exponentially more complicated than that. It could possibly lead to a lower turnout and could lead to loss of trust of the electorate because they don't trust the tabulation.
Right. Okay. Okay, I want to go back to the one person, one vote thing, okay? Because I feel like this is actually ranked choice voting. Here's my problem with this bill. This bill is kind of preemptively going against or preemptively restricting a potential tool that we're only just now seeing unfold in democracies across the world, including here in the United States. We've seen Maine and Alaska adopt this, and it's worked fine for them. We've actually seen 3 states where Republican primaries use this. In fact, Virginia, Utah, and Indiana, where the Republican primaries that go through it, they call it an instant runoff, actually. That way you don't have to have 2 runoffs or 2 elections. You could just have one where you rank your choice of voters, rank your choice of candidates, and then you're actually, if your first choice doesn't get it, then your second choice will get your vote. So I'm a little confused about how this might be more expensive in that case because it would just be one election as opposed to having 2 elections.
The time that you spend tabulating the votes.
Right.
That's calculated to be very expensive depending on the number of candidates. You brought up a couple of states that do this. Mm-hmm. Can I give you a couple of examples?
Yeah, please.
So we had Maine's 2nd Congressional District, Democratic primary. Mm-hmm. There were 126,139 votes cast. Mm-hmm. Of those, only 117,250 were counted toward the final round.
Okay.
Which means over 9,000 people Their vote did not count in that race.
Their vote did not count because their
ballots were
their
exhausted.
candidate wasn't even in there anymore.
That's correct.
Well, they still had their vote in there. It just wasn't counted in this particular process because their candidates didn't make it to the top of the tier. Correct?
Well, their vote was counted in the first round.
Yeah.
Maybe the second round.
Right, but when that candidate gets
But the
knocked
final-
off, it goes to the next one, right?
The final, if you tabulate the winners who won, calculate their votes, their votes did not count toward that at all.
Well, so I'm going to disagree with you on this one because I believe, this actually gives people, as opposed to in some states where your one vote might just not count at all because we have the electoral college system and so forth when we're talking about presidential candidates. This is a reason why I would have a big issue with preemptively restricting something that might be, an evolution in democracy that would be in a way to have more people participate and have more people's voices count. I'm not saying I am bringing a bill that's going to bring ranked choice voting to Alabama. I'm just saying I would be open to it. The beauty of the United States is that we got 50 experiments of democracy going on, and I would like to see more about what is happening in those other states that are adopting this, and then see if it actually is a more effective way for people, the citizens, the people of each state to have their voice heard. I do want to go back to the lower turnout as well, because when we're talking about a lower turnout vote, primaries are pretty low turnout usually here. And our midterms are pretty low turnout. Usually when we see record turnout in Alabama, it's usually a presidential election, those kinds of things, big national scene stuff. But as I'm sure we can definitely agree on this, state government is the stuff that touches everybody's lives on an everyday basis, right? So I would like to see, like I said, what's going on in other states, how they're using this system, and then maybe we can look at it once we've had some time to really evaluate some best practices and that kind of thing. Once again, I'm not saying I'm planning on bringing up a bill, but I think that this is a little preemptive to come in here and jump and say absolutely not already when we're just now beginning to really understand the processes of ranked choice voting in other states in the country. There is one thing in here, though, that talks about there's an exception in this bill, correct?
Talks about the what?
Well,
Exception?
in the
military.
description here, there's an exception for...
That's correct. They do that now.
Yeah, right, for the Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, correct?
Correct.
Is this because that's federal law and it's just like a process where you don't have to mail back ballots and go back and forth the whole time?
That's correct.
Okay. So in a way, that saves them time, that saves them effort, that saves them money. So, would you argue...
It would be more difficult through the absentee ballot process to redo that with the military. So
Right.
That's why it's done.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying if it works for them, why can't it work for us here?
That is a
in that
different
regard?
subset of our electorate, though.
Right. Okay.
Trying to explain this to, my aunt or something like that is
I understand.
a lot more
But
complicated.
there's a lot of people that don't understand the primary process, right? There's a lot of people out there that'll go out and say, hey, I went to go vote, but I didn't see you on the ballot. Well, it's because they went to go vote on a different primary, correct? So it wasn't because I was removed from the ballot in that case. They might just have gotten the wrong ballot. This is something that can happen, can be confusing for some people.
Right.
So even the current system that we have is confusing. But I think that's what's so important about civic education, making sure that we're really teaching our young people as far as how this process works, for a love of government, for a love of democracy and democratic representation and participation. I think that's what makes the United States so great, is because we have these strong civic institutions. And we are, each state's allowed to make sure, and govern their own elections. So, like I said, I'm not bringing a bill. I just want to say, I don't know why we're prohibiting it when it works for some folks. And we haven't had really time to see how this evolution kind of runs its course.
So I think we have had time. Like say, I brought you a specific example. I have several more.
Well, I got several more too,
Wanna hear
right? And we can also see how it changes up, like it can give a more moderate candidate too in some situations and kind of deal with some of the gerrymandering and that kind of stuff. Now, I understand that probably both of our party apparatuses are very much so against ranked choice voting.
Right.
Because it dominates kind of the status quo right now, correct? But I think that this is a way to kind of get over some of the things that we might have to. There's potential for it. There's potential for it. I'm not saying that, it is the end-all, be-all solution. I'm just saying I would like to see other states that are doing this, see how it runs its course, and see if it might be the best or a new way to really make sure that every citizen's vote counts in the election. And that's all I got to say. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for talking with me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the recognition.
Chair recognizes Representative Hall of Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman yield.
Yes, ma'am.
I wasn't sure if I missed the questions earlier in terms of what the real issue is that brought this bill to this place today.
The real issue?
The real issue, yes.
Like I said, it's very, very complicated. It's hard to explain. It's more expensive, and it can lead to people, their votes not actually counting in the election.
Could lead to, okay, you gave several things. You said it's complicated.
It's very complicated.
All right,
Trying to
in
explain
what
to
way?
someone, okay, you choose this candidate, you rank them number one. The ballots are extremely longer.
I'm hearing you. Go
depending on how-
ahead.
So more complicated.
More complicated.
It's more expensive. The time taking just to tabulate these votes, depending on the number of candidates, is exponentially longer, and you do have to pay people to tabulate the votes.
And you do have to do what?
Pay people to tabulate the votes.
Well, don't we have to do that anyway?
Yeah, well, now it's done at the precinct. We have the counting machines, and then those results are turned in. In this case, the ballots would be sent to Central, and they would have to be processed off-site.
So you're telling me that when you do this type of voting, that they are not, when I go to the poll to cast my vote in this type of voting, that it is not tallied immediately?
It is not. No, ma'am.
Why not?
Too complicated.
In what way? You know what? We're at the time of AI, artificial information. So it's hard for me to believe that we would create a ballot that would be too complicated.
Could we do it? Could we program the computers to do it? I think
course
we could, absolutely.
Because there are states that do this already, right?
Would the electorate trust it? I don't think
Wait
so.
a minute. No, not that. We do have some states that are doing this already, right?
We do.
Okay, who are they?
So I know of a few. I know Maine, I know Alaska, I know California, and I did give some examples of those where a lot of the votes didn't count.
But I want to stop right there. So we have people to do it. I believe, does Louisiana, I believe they do it as well, you think? No, you're not sure?
I'm not sure.
California, let's use California as an example.
California, San Francisco, you want to talk about that election?
Do I want to talk about that election?
As an example?
For California.
For California, yes.
Okay.
So in the 2010 Board of Supervisors general election, there were 20 rounds of tabulations.
20 rounds, okay.
20 rounds. 53% of the ballots had been exhausted by the end of those 23 rounds.
Okay.
And only 8,200 ballots contributed toward the final result.
Only 8,000 out of 20,000 votes contributed to the final count?
That's correct.
Now, so you're saying 20,000 people voted, the rest of only 8,000 ballots were used, or were
only 8,200 contributed to the final winner.
And that was based on the fact that it had 1, 2, 3, 4. You could select.
Think
right?
about that case. You'd select 1, 2, 3, 4,
right?
5,
Yeah.
up
but
to 20.
But that process. I don't hear anybody complaining. I haven't heard of any people complaining. And don't you think that their legislature would They have people elected that if they were concerned about that, they would complain and make it different.
So enough people have complained that we actually brought a bill.
Enough people complained in California.
Just thinking
for
about
us.
doing this type of ranked choice voting. It's like,
We don't even think like California. So
you know, we think about it.
No. So my point is, even though that is case, that is one that they use. Okay, that's a process that they use, and there are several states that use that, and we seem to be doing a lot of that in this session, based on what somebody else is doing or is not doing. That we think we ought to be getting ahead of them.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
you use, I think the young man, the person before me talked about the Army. Presently, that is allowed.
That is
right?
allowed, and we carved the
Right,
military
and
out of it because
right.
they continue to do that.
So we're going to leave it okay for them, those persons. But we're going to say, in Alabama, good old Alabama, we are going to make sure that we have an election process that would not include this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
one person,
so-
one vote. It's worked for several years.
It did what?
It's worked for several years.
What's worked for several years?
One person, one vote. The way we do it now.
Right. I mean, but that's one person, one vote there as well. If it was not,
Well, at
it
the
would-
end,
if
at the
it was
end,
not, think about it now. They have a chance. They cast a vote. That is not one person, one vote. Don't you think somebody would have gone to court over that if they felt that was the case?
if you think about it, at the end, there were 8,000. I'm sorry. There were 12,000 people that did not get a vote on that first.
But they didn't get. When you say they did not get a vote, out of the first, second, or third, or fourth place, no place. There were how many people running in the race and all of that? You're saying they didn't get a vote.
At the end, with the final, after 20 rounds of tabulation, only 53% of the ballots contributed to that final vote.
And was it based on them following the guidelines? They would follow the guidelines.
Some of them, yes. Some of them, no.
I see. You got to.
So if you only vote, if, say, my aunt, bless her heart, she goes in and say, I'm only going to vote for Dr. Shirey. That's all I'm going to vote for.
Exactly.
And then her ballot's exhausted.
Yeah.
And then it comes up as,
But
wait a
it's
minute,
not
53%?
exhausted. See, I think the point I'm making is that ballot is not exhausted. What my point is, that individual had a right to choose just one person if that's all that they wanted, as opposed to choosing 5 or 6. Or
Now, if
1,
that
2, or
person
3.
had won, their vote would have counted in that. But that
Well,
person
you know,
didn't.
well, if that's the case, anytime we go to the polls and vote, if there's a winner and a loser.
There is, because you get a majority at that point.
Right, but
At the end of this voting, a lot of times there is not a majority. You can win this vote with
Sure,
20, you can
but-
probably win with 25, 27% of the vote.
Well, if you look at the number of people that's going to the polls a day, many times I say what the system that we have today has not increased the number of people going to the polls. Matter of fact, I'm very concerned about how few people go to the polls and vote, because
I totally
it
agree.
leaves, and let me tell you why I'm concerned. I find a lot of people that think at a very different level than I think are the ones that get to be elected. And it's because of the number of people that did not go to the polls. So I think for that argument to be used, I think we have to move further. But I find it quite interesting that we are dealing with another one of those things that we're doing just fine where we are. We decided we're going to just in case somebody wants to. Now, if a person came to do this type of voting today, do you think that would pass?
Do I think it would pass here? I do not.
Okay.
But that's why we're doing a bill now.
Because we have this bright idea just in case
Yes, ma'am.
that we want to make sure
Yes, ma'am.
that we don't have just some crazies coming up here having us vote for 3 or 4 people based on how we rank them, and that the possibility of one of those 3 or 4 will become elected. But yet, even in the voting process that we have now, we have a small number of people that are elected, and that small number of people that go to vote to be elected, I find that we find ourselves many times, I learn, oh my God, where did that person come from? And then when you look at the number of votes that were cast, you go, so it happens.
If you look at the number of votes that are cast, that person that was elected did have a majority. They had to have at
Exactly,
least 50.1%.
but my point, I go back to, it happens, this can happen either way, with what you're saying or with what the process that we have today.
If it's ranked choice voting and the first round, the candidate gets 50.1%.
The gentlewoman's time has
They
expired. The
would be
chair
elected.
recognizes Representative Simpson
Thank
of
you, Mr.
Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Representative Shirey, will you yield?
Yes, sir.
I just want to thank you for bringing this bill, for your effort. I know you've worked with Senator Orr on this. I know this is something that's important to you for election integrity. I know this is something that's important to our state to continue the path that you're talking about with one person, one vote, to make it easy for everybody to understand what they're voting for and not get lost in the complications of the ballot. So I want to commend you for this effort and this very strong bill that will be great for the citizens of Alabama.
Thank you, Representative.
Chair recognizes Representative Fincher from Randolph County to be the fourth person on the BIR.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. Pro Tem. Do you yield, sir?
Yes, sir.
I want to thank you for bringing this legislation. Here in our environs, we are very politically active and we know who is who and we have a pretty good knowledge. But I guarantee you, I could walk around this building and ask the question who the state treasurer of Alabama is, and a lot of people, even here in this environment, would not know. Or ask who the Commissioner of Agriculture and Industry is in the state of Alabama, and a lot of people would not know. What you're trying to prevent, I think, is taking this to the nth degree. Sometimes people, when they go to vote, the average citizen, when he or she goes to vote, they're flipping a coin. They really do not know the candidates' names. They don't know who. And now we're not only saying you select one out of these 5 candidates for this statewide office, but we're saying now you have to rank these 5 people who you don't even know perhaps, and you do not recognize their names. This is making it a very complicated procedure, and it's making voting in this state extremely complicated as well. I think the citizens of Alabama will thank you for trying to put an end to this before it's birthed. And I thank you very much for what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman.
Question for the body's adoption of the BIR. The clerk will unlock the machine. The members will vote. Have all the members voted? Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. The BIR is adopted.
Move for final passage.
The chair recognizes Representative McCampbell from Marengo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Now, I really want to know, why are we looking at this? If I've heard people talking about it's just in case. So it's just in case of what?
Just in case that ranked choice voting comes to Alabama.
How
If
would
a municipality
ranked
wants
choice
to-
voting come to Alabama?
I guess a municipality could decide to do that.
A municipality could decide to do that.
I guess it could. Right now, there's no law against it.
Okay, so the wisdom of this state, of the legislature, who say that we don't want the federal government telling us what to do. Now in our infinite wisdom, we've decided we are so smart that we can tell the local people what's good for them. And the local people are the ones that are going to vote for us. So what makes us decide that we want to control somebody else when we don't even like being controlled by a higher power also?
When we discover that there's a problem with something, we usually address it. We usually fix it. We
And
try to
when
head
the
them off.
federal government discovers there's a problem in the state of Alabama, you don't want them to address it though.
Well, constitutionally, we do have states' rights.
And constitutionally, those local cities would still have their rights.
But they wouldn't.
Okay.
Some of those votes wouldn't count.
Let
me give you another example. Can I give you another example?
Okay.
Oakland, California. Right now, there's a lawsuit by the NAACP challenging the mayor's race because they're saying their voters don't understand ranked choice voting. I think
Okay.
that's an issue. If you don't understand the process, and we make it unavoidably more complicated, that's on us. And if we can stop that before it starts, I think that's incumbent on us to do that.
Okay, and what cities then, or what towns have we had that gives us heartburn, that gives us reason to believe they're even considering this?
I don't have any towns at this point.
You don't have any towns, nothing to
But
offer
we
here?
do nationally, different states, different cities that are having problems, and there are lawsuits, and it's both sides of the aisle. This is
And
not
it's
a
on
Republican
both
bill.
sides of the aisle.
It's not a Democrat bill. It's a voter and an election integrity bill.
Okay. Well, you know, I'm not looking at it as a Democrat or Republican bill.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at there is no need for this in the state of Alabama at this time. And the reason I'm saying that is because right now, one person, one vote, and we have touted how safe our elections are, you know. And so I'm still trying to find the reasoning for why we would need to address this right now. But let me give you one other thing that I think we do need to address. Would you expect your sheriff to be partisan in how he administers law?
I can't speak for all the sheriffs. My sheriff, I think he would be impartial.
Would you expect a judge that you go before, would you expect them to be impartial?
I would expect them, yes.
Would you want your DA to represent all the people to the greatest extent that they could possibly do it?
I think you know the answer is yes to that.
You know, but yet and still, we are talking about ranked voting, but we have a system of partisanship when it comes to these people that we are electing to serve in these positions of nonpartisanship. So next year, I'm going to come with a bill that's going to address that issue. So I'm putting everybody on notice right now that I will have that bill. And I'm going to tell you who's going to oppose it. It's going to be the parties, because the parties, Democrat and Republican, want to be able to control, first of all, the money and then the loyalty of people rather than the impartiality of a person. So, just like you say, we don't need rank whatever voting. I'm saying right now, we shouldn't have parties controlling the impartiality of those that we will sit in judgment of us for different things as well. So I want you all to think about that over the summer, because we are going to come with a bill next year that we're going to try and address it. And let's use your terminology. I don't know that it's happening right now, but it could happen. And I want to just be proactive in terms of making sure it doesn't happen.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Rafferty of Jefferson.
Thank you, for the recognition. So there was one thing that was said, and I just want to maybe offer a counterpoint to that, and that was dealing with this is preserving election integrity. And let's be real, this isn't preserving election integrity. This is preserving the status quo so that people and lobbyists and the party apparatus out there who are not elected to sit and be in this chamber right now have more power than the people of the state of Alabama. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Jefferson. I know. Chair recognizes Representative Gavanna Jefferson.
I'm good. I have so been looking forward to this.
No, you haven't, because let me tell you why. I told the speaker, I think the other day, that I know when it's time for this session to end, because when y'all start bringing these bills, like this one, it's time for us to go home. The 30 days is up. And the party is over. It's time to sign and die. That's it. And for those of us who've been here a little bit longer than others, they know what I mean. Now, Shari, you all right with me most of the time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
I'll take that.
Wow. You haven't bought me any of the little wipes lately, but hopefully I'll get a couple of those for my glasses, because as you can see, these are filthy. I never heard of this concept before. And I don't even want you to, really, I don't even know if I want you to enlighten me. But I would like for you to tell me why and why you're bringing this in. And the only reason I really rose for this occasion, or for an occasion such as this, is because when I hear anyone in this chamber mention voter integrity here in the state of Alabama, there's never going to be anything foolproof to things that we do. I don't care. You can be the smartest of the smartest. You can be the whatever. Somebody is going to always be able to crack the code. Okay?
I agree.
Now, with this issue of voter integrity, I would not allow this opportunity to pass, because you all could time and time again bring these bills to strengthen our voter integrity when we have one of the highest grades for voter integrity in the United States of these here Americas.
Because we bring these bills.
No, it ain't got nothing to do with that. It was already that way before you all brought any bill. And then when the question is asked, can somebody show me 100 cases? I even left it down, put it to a number. Not tell me how many, because one year was like 4. One year, I don't even think it ever got up to 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. I know it didn't. So out of 6 million people, 6 million people, in the state of Alabama. But you have less than 100 people reported or found out to have committed voter fraud in a state with nearly 6 million people. Now, I don't know what these little incidences are in these little small counties or whatever. I haven't a clue. I really don't. I hear the horror stories. I'm trying to figure out why it's that big of a deal. But if you would just enlighten me as to, again, why you are bringing this particular bill, because my seatmate over here, Representative Yarbrough, has already helped me to kind of understand a little bit of it, because he asks me different questions at times, because he knows that I'm a very knowledgeable person when I come to this microphone. And so I did not have a good response on that, because it was almost like a "what you talking about, Willis" moment. You remember Different Strokes? What you talking about, Willis?
Unfortunately, I do.
Yeah, what you talking about, Willis? I mean, it ain't unfortunate. It's a blessing to still be alive, to live past those shows. So help me understand this, Doc.
So I think you're kind of making my point there. Help you understand this. This is the problem. This type of voting is very hard to understand. Okay?
Are you trying to advocate for this type of voting?
I'm advocating that we ban this type of voting because this type of voting is very difficult to understand.
Well,
It's very difficult to administer.
Divisive concepts are very difficult to understand, but y'all still passed a divisive concept bill. There's a lot of things that you all passed that are very, very difficult. Don't say gay in Alabama is that's very difficult for me to understand how somebody doesn't say gay. Gay folks gonna be here forever. They're in your family, so I mean, it's a lot of stuff y'all bring that I just can't. I don't even want to understand. As my mama would say, if I understood it, it would make me simple. But I want you to just tell me about not the concept, because I've been doing my research a minute ago on the concept. Okay. Again, why you are bringing, or the Republicans are bringing this type of legislation.
So I do happen to be a Republican. I am bringing the bill, but this is not a Republican bill. This is not a Democrat.
Every bill out here dealing with voter, as you all call it, voter integrity is a Republican bill. See, the Jefferson County jammed up right now because of a voting bill that my colleagues and I had a problem with. Now, they had a problem with it because voting is very sensitive to us.
Yes, ma'am.
So there was a contest put on a bill because it dealt with the voting and us not necessarily understanding or being in support thereof. And now everybody's being punished because 3 people decided that they did not agree with the bill, and we said it in a committee meeting. But you can't punish me on mine, not on my local bill, because it was one I was going to abandon anyway, because it needed some work. So, help me understand. Since you say I don't understand, and this is why you bringing the bill, you got 3 minutes.
I got 3 minutes. Can I cite a case?
Do whatever you want to.
So this case is involved in New York.
New York.
Once again, this case was...
Trump on trial at New York, right?
He is.
Okay.
This case was brought by the NAACP.
Mm-hmm.
The head of the NAACP in New York slammed the new ranked choice voting system as voter suppression. It says ranked choice voting is not beneficial to minorities and is voter suppression.
Now, you know what? You should never bring... You just quoted the NAACP.
Twice.
Twice.
Yes, ma'am.
Twice.
Well, I'm trying to tell you that this is not a Republican...
It's time for us to sign. Now, you have come here to utilize the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And we can't even teach about the NAACP any longer in our classrooms. Now, it's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with this now. Listen, Shira.
I honestly don't know that that's true.
I just don't understand. I don't understand. Y'all, I mean, CRT. Y'all don't want nothing taught about black history in this country. That's a part of you all's agenda, unless I'm missing something. So I'm just saying you just quoted. I'm only going about what y'all say. And I'm still this girl that stood up here last year about my big eyelashes and my big glasses. And they have served me quite well in my lifetime. Because it's a lot of knowledge up here in between these two eyes.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just go by what y'all say. So we banned schools, but now we have a bill for which we're going to parade around the NAACP as a defense to the bill when anytime the NAACP comes to our Constitution Election and Campaign Committee, they're basically run out of the room. And just a few weeks ago, we had a co-chair who asked the chairman to fire the clerk because he didn't like the way the clerk was allowing the black folks to come in the room and speak on a bill dealing with SB 1. And didn't know I'm sitting next to him as he's talking to the chairman about it. I did share with the speaker at my disappointment, but it didn't surprise me. Wanted Lil Cliff fired. It's pitiful.
I'm not privy to those conversations.
I understand, but I am.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll just do my little research, but I appreciate you enlightening me on the NAACP. And in 2 instances that you utilize the NAACP.
That's 2 that I know of.
In a state that we can't even teach our children anymore that Martin Luther King had a dream because it's a part of black history. And people still don't know what the Middle Passage is or was, or the South Atlantic slave trade and all that. Okay, all right, thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Clark from Mobile.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Shirey.
Yes, ma'am.
How are you?
I'm well. How about you?
Good, good. So I have an inquiry
Yes, ma'am.
about this legislation and how it would impact a city in Alabama that is already doing this type ranked choice voting for its city council. And so the question is, since they're already doing that, if this bill passes prohibiting that type of voting, what impact would it have on this city's ability to continue doing what they're doing?
They would not be allowed to continue that. That is my understanding of the bill.
This bill would outlaw that process in the city that's already using ranked choice voting.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for the answer to the question.
Question for the body is final passage of HB 186. The clerk will unlock the machine. The members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 74 yeas, 28 nays. SB 186 passes.
Thank you. Thank you, members.
That was it, yeah. Let's go back to there. Clerk will call SB 112, please.
On page 33 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 112 by Senator Gavan with substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Wadsworth of Winston County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the recognition. What this bill does, this is an ALI bill, and what it does is, and there's a substitute, it tries to make some changes to change where the Delaware law is similar to Alabama law, so more people will pass and use the Alabama Corporation Act in order to do the bills. It also, there's a substitute on here that just deals with trade associations. If there's not any questions, I'd move for the BR.
Chair recognizes Representative Hall of Madison.
Thank you. Would the gentleman yell? I couldn't understand you. Tell me, you made a comment about the state of Delaware and Alabama.
Yeah,
What is that?
what it is, a lot of larger corporations are incorporated in the state of Delaware.
Right.
And what this bill is an ALI bill that is trying to codify things similar to Delaware for the purpose of enticing people to form their corporations and have their main corporations in Alabama.
So we're trying to become a Delaware number 2?
For purposes of corporations, yes.
So you give me an example of some that we're appealing to?
It just speeds up the process of making changes speeds up the process for making changes to corporations, adoptions, allows you to just do things in a quicker manner than what the current Alabama law is.
So the length of time,
Ma'am?
what are we trying to do to shorten the timeline for that process from what timeline to what? I mean,
I can't tell you exactly what timeline, but it's just to speed up the process on that. And it also, the substitute adds a separate provision for trade associations. If trade associations want to be to follow this corporate law, they can do that. And if they got a current one, they have to elect not to follow this law, but to adopt the trade association law in a new section. And that's what the substitute is dealing with.
So to make sure I'm clear, if a group becomes incorporated in Alabama, they must make sure, as opposed to Delaware, that whatever you have codified here, they must follow this process as opposed to following process from.
They still follow the Alabama process, but for example, if you have a trade association, if they do nothing, they have to comply with the Alabama corporation law. But if they change their articles of certification, then they just say we want to follow the trade association rules, then they would follow Section 18 of this new act.
Okay.
And if they do have a new trade association that comes into play and they don't do anything, then they're subject to this corporate act.
So they could very well have their own things in place in terms of the rules or whatever.
For the trade association.
Right.
Yeah.
And as long as they are in the state of Alabama, even though they may have been from outside the state, if they're in the state of Alabama, they're not required to follow where they came from, but what we have for them in the state.
Actually, the purpose of it is to entice people to form corporations in Alabama using this law opposed to using the Delaware. Now, if they're an out-of-state corporation like in Delaware, they still have to register in the state of Alabama, and they're still under that Delaware law, but they have to register in Alabama as a foreign corporation licensed to do business in the state of Alabama.
Is that the case? Same thing for Alabama? If we formed a corporation here to go to Delaware, we would have to do the same thing?
That's
Is that
correct.
the case?
If we went to Delaware, we'd have to be in Delaware we'd be an Alabama foreign corporation licensed to do business in the state of Delaware.
Thank you.
Same thing.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson, Representative Hollis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, would the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm trying not to get confused. Okay, explain it to me again, because I hear we're talking about if you form a corporation in Delaware versus forming a corporation in Alabama, my mindset went to the place where would this motivate shell companies?
Well, it's not that as much as what it is. Nationwide, Delaware has been known to be basically the area where people incorporate because it's easier for corporations to operate, and you have a lot of large corporations that have adopted incorporated in Delaware. But even though they incorporate in Delaware, if they want to do business in Alabama, they have to file a petition and ask us to be a foreign corporation licensed to do business in Alabama. And
So it would be like having a business in another state. Well, would it be like having a business in Delaware and then having a business in Alabama, or having it incorporated where you're doing business as?
well, if you incorporate in Delaware, you would be, and you want to operate in Alabama or Mississippi, you have to become a foreign corporation licensed to do business in Alabama or
So
Mississippi.
it's a new application.
No, you don't.
So it's doing business as.
That's the current law now.
Okay.
Now, what this does is this is designed, if you're a new corporation that's not been incorporated anywhere, ALI is trying to work it where people in big businesses are more likely to incorporate in Alabama, which sometimes then once you incorporate in Alabama, you'll bring in their company, their main company, and have locations in Alabama. And if you incorporate in Alabama, using Alabama law here, if you move to another state where you're doing something, you've got to become licensed in any other state. But this bill is mainly designed to make it where people are enticed to incorporate in
basically,
Alabama.
You have a company in Delaware, but then if you come into that state of Alabama, then you have to abide by the rules of the state of Alabama.
Well, Alabama.
But that's in Delaware.
There's still a corporation license in
But you just got to
Delaware.
have a license for the state.
That's correct.
Okay, so basically you're purchasing licenses.
Yeah, it's actually that. Remember the privilege license return that we've eliminated the minimum amount. That's what they have to file when they come to Alabama. If you're a Delaware corporation.
Okay. I think I got it. So basically, when you come here, do as the Romans do. You got to go by the rules and regulations of the state of Alabama, even if your company is in Delaware.
You have
So
to.
basically, you are purchasing a license per state that you're in.
Well, that's correct. You have to do that to do business anywhere.
Right.
Now, this bill has a substitute, and what that substitute does is if you're a trade association, if you don't want to be have to follow this particular statute for corporations, you can change your paperwork to basically make it where you're under the Trade Association Act, which is a new act under this bill. If you are a trade association and you want to be under this corporate act, then you don't do anything. But if you're a trade association and you don't want to be under this act, then you have to change the
status,
the certificate.
Okay.
And then once you change that certificate, then you're under that section 18 of the new act.
So it would be different for the trade associations.
If they choose,
They have the option.
they have the option. That's correct.
Okay.
And if they don't choose to, they're under the regular corporation. And the reason is there's things dealing with retention of records, different retention issues that the trade associations would be under if they're under the Trade Association Act. Otherwise, they have to follow whatever the Alabama says.
Okay. I think I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. Question for the body now is adoption of the BR. Clerk will unlock the machine and members vote. Clerk will lock machine. Record the votes. 101 ayes, 1 nay. The BR has been adopted.
And, the Speaker, we've got a substitute, which is adding the trade association language to it.
Okay.
And if there's not any questions, I'd move to adopt the substitute.
Next question is adoption of the sub. Clerk will unlock machine. The members vote. Clerk will lock machine. Record the vote. 101 ayes, 0 nays. Sub has been adopted. Representative Wadsworth.
If there's not any other questions, I move for the final passage.
That's questions. Final pass is VSB 112. Clerk will unlock the machine. The members vote. Clerk will lock machine, record the vote. 95 ayes, 1 nay. SB 112 has passed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, body.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Clerk, let's pull these. Let's pull SB 144 out of the basket. HB 144, I'm sorry.
Message from the Senate, Mr. Speaker. The Senate has amended as therein shown and as amended has passed the following House bill and returned same herewith to the House of Representatives. House
Chairman.
Bill number 144. Signed, Patrick Harris, Secretary.
Chairman Garrett, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, we would like to go to conference, non-concur.
Okay, you've heard the request to non-concur. Clerk unlock machine and members vote. Clerk unlock machine and members vote. Clerk lock. Conferees. It means we non-concurred, Ms. Hall. Okay, the conferees for that, I got 3 here, and you can come down and ask a question for them, okay? Let me do that. The conferees for 144 will be Chairman Garrett, Chairman Laverne, and Representative Drummond. Ms. Clerk, let's pull 145 out of the basket.
Message from the Senate, Mr. Speaker. The Senate has amended as therein shown and as amended has passed the following House bill and returned same herewith to the House of Representatives. House Bill number 145, signed Patrick Harris, Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we non-concur and go to conference.
Ms. Hall, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes.
So now these bills that you have, you've said non-concur. Could you give me some example of what we're dealing with?
Well,
the problem
we
is?
just now receiving, they just passed the budgets this morning or this afternoon, and so there's a lot of information in those budgets. There are not a lot of changes to what we did. There's some changes that they made.
Sure.
We need to better understand.
Sure.
So I want to have time to study those and review those and
Can you give me an example?
well, I'd rather not get into specific. I mean, they've added, they've made some changes. I just would like to get some explanation about.
And the only thing I say, it's a public, this is a public process. I'm seeking information.
Okay.
And I think I have a right now.
Well,
I'm not going to give you the hand just as I was given the hand.
I'm not trying.
Because I have a lot more respect. I don't do that.
I'm not trying to be coy. What I'm saying is,
I'm not asking you. All I'm asking is a request. Now I know it
for
gets
example,
on folks' nerves that I ask questions, but I'm going to continue to do that.
the amount of the amount of money that went, for example, in supplemental money that went to capital grant program has changed. There are some new line items that have been added to supplemental. I'd like to understand those. There have been in the budget. There are a couple of things. One item is related to a bill that we haven't passed yet that the bodies haven't passed yet, that we're trying to, legislation we're working on. So I need to understand how that money would be reallocated if that bill doesn't pass, because we're down to the last couple of days. So it's really, I will say this, Chairman Orr and I have had a lot of conversations throughout the process. We've even had great communication, but when all the things have moved quickly, and I just want to have time to go through the line items and check everything and make sure I understand, and there's a potential we may want to make a few minor tweaks.
And I appreciate that, and you still haven't given me any information. But I understand and I hear what you're saying. Based on what you have, what you don't, you're saying you don't know.
I literally
that
was
you
just
don't have
handed
an
a stack
idea.
of material, and it's different than what we submitted. So I want to understand that, and I think, and I did. There are a couple of items on there that I think we need to question.
And I will say that we are moving awfully fast. We had a stack of bills and things that we came in here under, just stacked, and we're moving really very fast. I take my work serious. Now, and so I'm saying there is no reason why we shouldn't be able to get information about what we're discussing. And if we are going to move in this way, I think that you all ought to have an opportunity to have to go through that and have some idea before it's brought up. That's for me.
Yeah, that's what we'll,
as a member.
that's exactly
But it's
the
not
spirit in
happening.
which, well, that's on this budget. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm basically saying, give me
if
time
I
to come
ask-
back.
But if I saw it and you say you can't give me any specifics, somebody's added something here, somebody's added something else someplace else, but I don't know what that added is. That's all I'm saying. Okay? And that's all I'm saying. I am seeking information. We passed through things earlier. Bills and things came up. You get them and then you move on. I want to know for the people that I represent. Now, nobody else may not want to, and I am so sorry if that bothers the rest of you. But that is it. And I believe there are other people that want to know.
Let me give you,
and I shouldn't be venting at you because I'm really concerned about my speaker and how he treated.
But let me give you an example. For example, we passed legislation. Y'all listen up. Let me explain. This is an example of it may be okay, but I want to discuss it and make sure it's okay. We passed legislation that would provide funding for 200 additional principals. And the way we did that was we had some of that money in the supplemental, some of it was in the budget. And in what's come down, everything has been moved to the budget and zeroed out in the supplemental. Now, I believe that it's been handled correctly. I believe the funding is there based on conversations I've had, but I want to trace that through because not understanding that, I don't want to come up and say we don't have enough money to fund principals. So that's an example that affects supplemental and the budget. And again, I believe it's all right, but I can't swear to you right now that it is.
I never asked you to swear to anything. I asked you to tell you what are the problems.
Well, that's an example. I want to make sure we can fund those principles and we have the adequate funding.
But I would strongly recommend if we get other reports that I am allowed to hear what those reports are about and have an opportunity to speak to it or not speak to it. Thank you.
Well, let me ask you, okay.
All those in favor of non-concurrence on 145, clerk unlock machine, members vote. Clerk lock machine, record the votes. 100 ayes, 0 nays, 145 has been non-concurred. Count for each rec committee also will be Garrett, Lovern, and Drummond. Mr. Clerk, let's call up 147, HB 147, please.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, the Senate has amended as therein shown, and as amended has passed the following House bill and returned same herewith to the House of Representatives. House Bill number 147, signed Patrick Harris, Secretary.
Chairman Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would also move here that we non-concur and go to conference. This is the Advancement Technology Fund. Again, the total amount didn't change. That money is distributed by formula, but there were a couple of line items within that were removed or changed, and I just need to understand what that is, why the need for that, why the change for that. More technical in nature than anything else.
Okay, you've heard the request of the sponsor is non-concur. Clerk will unlock machine, the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 101 ayes, 0 nays. The motion prevails. Those conferees also will be Garrett, Lovern, and Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Clerk, let's pull SB 252 out of the basket, please.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, the Senate has concurred in and adopted the report of the Committee on Conference on the disagreement of the two houses on the House amendment to Senate Bill number 252, said conference report being in words and figures as follows, to wit. And it's signed Senator Greg Reed, Senator Robert Stewart, Senator Clyde Chambliss, conferees on the part of the Senate, Representative Randall Shedd, Representative Kelvin Lawrence, Representative Andy Whitt, conferees on part of the House.
Chairman Shedd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. This is the bill dealing with the governor's package on Alabama Growth Alliance Act. The amendment that we passed in the House is still in there. They're dealing with ecotourism. The amendment that we passed dealing with certain private citizens having to not file ethics forms was removed from it. So that's the difference. Mr. Speaker, I move that we approve the conference report.
The sponsor has agreed to concurrence. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 103 ayes, 0 nays. Concurrence has.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, the Senate has non-concurred in the House amendment to the following Senate bill, Senate Bill number 137, and requests a committee on conference. And the Senate has appointed as committee on part of the Senate, Senators Elliott, Gudger, and Singleton, signed Patrick Harris, Secretary.
Chairwoman Wilcox.
Will non-concur and vote to go to conference, please.
Okay. Okay, the sponsor would wishes is none to concur. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. 100 ayes, 0 nays. It has been none concurred. The conferees for that committee will be Wilcox, Rafferty, and Robbins. Let's pull up HB 407.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, the Senate has amended, as therein shown, and as amended, has passed the following House bill and returned same herewith to the House of Representatives. House Bill number 407, signed Patrick Harris, Secretary.
Chairman Pettis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the overtime bill where we put into Fair Labor Standards Act. Railroad was left out when we do the Fair Labor Standards. We added railroad back in. We changed the effective date from January 1st to October 1st. With that, I take the amendment.
Okay, the gentleman wishes to concur. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 102 ayes, 0 nays. Concurrence has passed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, member.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's call up, Mr. Clerk, let's call up HB 450. HB 450.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, the Senate has amended as therein shown, and as amended has passed the following House bill and returned same herewith to the House of Representatives. House Bill number 450, signed Patrick Harris, Secretary.
President Starnes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 450, I concur with. It's a Talk County constitutional amendment we voted for, and then we just went 7 mills across the board. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I concur with it.
Okay, you've heard the gentleman's explanation. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes. 80 ayes, 0 nays. Concurrence has passed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and body.
Mr. Clerk, let's call up SB 67.
On page 58 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 67 with substitute by Senator Albritton, the general fund budget.
Chairman Reynolds, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, just as a reminder, we do have copies up here. We also have copies of an amendment as well for this general fund. These copies are identical to what you had during the briefing yesterday. SB 67 does reflect a $3,373,459,234. And Mr. Speaker, I have a committee sub, and since no BIR is required, I'll go ahead and explain that. As we discussed earlier, like I say, we ended the 2023 budget cycle with about a 16.6% increase over our 2022 numbers. We have seen that same type of increase in this fiscal budget, mainly due to the same factors that I commented on the supplemental, our SSUT tax, our ad valorem taxes, and certainly our interest on state accounts that continue to stay up much longer than we anticipated. You know, your sub, House members, mainly focused on going back and reinstating all the line items that were cut in the Senate from the governor's previous budget. I just felt like the agencies that provide services for all Alabamians needed to be restored as much as they can. The only two items that we did not get back identical to the governor's budget was the seeds funding, but we returned that to $20 million. And then the EV infrastructure, we returned that to $4 million, not $5 million. And then you'll see some focuses on agency needs for one-time needs, for communications equipment for ALEA, and then looking at our largest impact on the general fund and the related increases. Let me just go through those now quickly. Medicaid, which is now at $955 million. That's a $92 million increase, but that is no expansion of Medicaid. That is simply playing catch up to the years that we did not fully fund Medicaid due to an increase in federal dollars. Now we're seeing that decline. We're having to increase this amount and certainly hope we don't see that every year. And just to remind you, 52% of who we serve under Medicaid are children. Corrections, $736 million. This does not include the $150 million for construction. That increases $74,849,763. Mental health budget, $235 million. That's a $23 million increase, mainly related to our crisis system of care. We're now about to open our 6th crisis center, and that's about $7 million each for operational cost. Department of Human Resources, $144 million to $22 million increase. That's mainly related to one-time services for psychiatric and mental health care for our at-risk foster kids throughout the state. And Mr. Speaker, I will ask to adopt the sub now, and then I'll have an amendment.
Okay, the request from the chairman is to adopt the sub. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 103 ayes, 0 nays. Sub has been adopted, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, members. I have an amendment, floor amendment, and I will go through the changes there. Mainly it's due to language.
Clerk, see the amendment.
Amendment to Senate Bill number 67 by Representative Reynolds.
Mr. Chairman.
The amendment mainly deals with language changes related to where funds are allocated. There are some additions and subtractions in this, and we'll go through them right quick. Lines 5 no change in that funding. Replace line 882 on page 32 related to language change, City of Mountain Brook for park upgrades, $250,000. Line 936 on page 33, and that is related to City of Pritchard for $250,000 for the Mitchell Library. And then on lines 1528 and 1529, related to Community Foundation of Northeast Alabama, no change in funding. That is just a change in the allocation location of those funds. Department of Corrections, you heard me tell you yesterday during the briefing about $100,000 being removed from a reentry program on the Department of Corrections. We are restating that $100,000 in that location. And then replace lines 2809 through 2814, and that's related to a $250,000 allocation to Bear Creek Development Authority. And that's explanation of the amendment, Mr. Speaker, and I'll ask to adopt the amendment.
That is questions, adoption of the amendment. Clerk will unlock the machine. The members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the votes. 101 ayes, 0 nays. It has been adopted. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If there's no other questions, I'll ask for final approval of SB 67 as adopted and amended.
That is questions, final passage of SB 67. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record vote. 103 ayes, 0 nays. SB 67 has passed.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Speaker.
Good job. Good job. Thank you. Chair recognizes Representative Lawrence for a moment of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. At this time, if the members would kind of indulge me for 1 second, I would like for the Montgomery County delegation to come down, please. Montgomery County. If Jefferson want to join us, they're welcome to. Come on, Representative Hollis. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, today is a very, very special day. She's probably going to tell us a few things about ourselves once it's over, but that's okay. We're willing to kind of deal with it. Today is Representative Tashina Marr's birthday. And so we want to tell her how much we appreciate her being a part of our delegation. Sometimes she can be Tashina, but most of the time she's always helpful in trying to make sure we do the right thing and keep us together. So if you all want to sing happy birthday, that's fine, but I don't want to start it off, so we're going to allow Representative Hollis to kind of help us.
One, two, three.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tina.
Tasha.
Happy birthday to you.
Now, before we go, if the delegation member want to have anything to say, if that's okay with you, Mr. Speaker. You good?
I just want to say happy birthday to my colleague, my friend, my sister, my close neighbor. We appreciate everything you do, not only down here at the State House, but throughout the community. on your own. And we're so very proud of you for the farm that the area that you're providing for the community. So thank you, not just for what you do here, but all you've done throughout the city and the state for others. Love you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So, Tashina, I just want you to know I didn't have nothing to do with that now. Chair recognize Representative Easterbrook for a moment of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of you may not know, but in mine and Shane Stringer's district, we have a kid that's 15 years old. Him and his mother was homeless for a period of time, and he's now on the American Idol. He's in the top 6. They're coming to Mobile on May the 14th. The community has to raise the funding to set the sound system and the stadium or whatever you call it up at the Mobile Fairgrounds, and they're asking for sponsorships. They are 501c, so if anybody's interested, you get 5 tickets to the American Idol. Let me know. I have it in electronic form. So thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Travis for a moment of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would, if you would, join me in a moment of silence. A good dear friend of mine, and many people here in the state may have known, a gentleman named Robert Bob Prince, a very brilliant legal scholar, served as advocate professor, teaching students, trial court. He was one of the state lawyers representing us in the OxyContin and the drug case and everything like that. He'd been fighting a courageous battle with cancer, and he lost that battle this morning. So I would just ask you to join me in a moment of silence for Bob Prince. Thank you. Amen.
Amen. Early this morning when we recognized the day of prayer, Representative Ensler was late. No. So I would like to recognize him to say a prayer and talk about his faith.
Thank you, and I admittedly was tardy this morning, but I appreciate the opportunity now. As some might know, I'm of the Jewish faith, so appreciate the opportunity. I'm certainly not a rabbi, but attend the synagogue, one of the synagogues here in Montgomery. I'll just share this briefly. I'm supposed to go to Israel on October 10th, but of course the trip changed because of what happened on October 7th. So it's certainly been a challenging time, but certainly praying and hoping for peace, not just in that region of the world, but all over and here in our country. And with that, I'll can say a closing prayer. God, thank you for bringing us here today to gather and do the people's work. We are always mindful, especially of the words of the prophet Micah, to do justice, to love goodness, and serve humbly. We're here to do the people's work of uplifting, especially the needy and the poor, and doing justice for all. We pray and ask for peace in Israel, for Palestinians that are suffering, and for people all over the world. We ask that we can come together, that we can work together to do the greater good. And as we leave the house here later today, we pray for safe travels home for everyone. And in God's name we say, amen.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile.
A prayer come true. Ladies and gentlemen, I move the House stand in adjournment.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.